Hey everyone, welcome to our session. We're from the Franklin Special District, and our session is called Leading Together, Practical Ways Communicators Can Help Principals Build Trust and Drive Vision. This is our superintendent, David Snowden. He has been with our school district for 25 years and has provided such vision and clarity around the communications program. I'm Susanna Gentry. I'm the communications director for the Franklin Special District, and I have been in my position for 33 years.
And I'm Alicia Erickson. I'm the principal at Poplar Grove School. Poplar Grove is a pre-K-8 building, but we are comprised of two separate schools. Our elementary school is a pre-K-4 school, and our middle school is a 5-8 school. And I've been the principal at the elementary this is going to be my 14th year.
Hi everybody, my name is Amy Patton. I'm the principal at Liberty Elementary School. We are a pre-K through 4th grade building, and I have been serving in my role at Liberty Elementary for 7 years. So today you are going to have a couple of learning objectives that you are going to walk away with feeling very confident. Participants will be able to support principals in carrying district-wide messaging and vision into our school level communication. You will be able to use transparency and consistency to rally staff around those challenging initiatives that we all face. You will be able to craft clear, confident messaging for sensitive or high-stakes situations.
So why does this matter? It matters because communication isn't something that we do for principals, it's something that we do with principals. And the reality is principals are expected to lead instructional improvement, build school culture, manage sensitive situations, communicate with families, and carry out district initiatives and make sure that they move forward. We have a great opportunity when we work together with our communication directors and work collaboratively, in that messages become very clear and concise. Trust grows faster, not just within our district, but also within our school and our school communities. Initiatives gain momentum, and school communities feel connected across the district.
So in the Franklin Special District, we are a small district, about 15 minutes south of Nashville, Tennessee. We are a public school district serving 8 schools and about 3,200 students, pre-K through 8th. Hallmarks of our district include small class sizes, economically strong community. There's about 40,000 people in Franklin, in our district, because Franklin is larger than just our district. And we have a diverse student body. So while we have highly educated, economically strong families, we also have 40% free and reduced lunch. We feel like we balance that very well in our district. We're one of the state's top performing school districts, one of 14 in the state that have achieved exemplary status. The communication challenge, I would say, is a balance that we have to get right. Every school has its own story, its own personality, its own school culture, and its own community expectations in the way they deliver messaging. At the same time, we as a district have to remain aligned, consistent, and clear, and we have to recognize that families are going to expect that aligned, consistent communication no matter what building their children are in. The solution is trust. The strongest communication systems are built on trust between those three, and while the natural trust begins with the principal and the superintendent on all things education, the communications director has to be in on that conversation. They have to know exactly what these two are talking about in order for the messaging from the district or from the school, the guidance that you give the school principals or the department supervisors, so that all of it is clear and aligned and everyone is singing from the same song sheet. Yeah, so while we talked about in the previous slide the importance of the school's voice in the district, the umbrella of the district voice, we do recognize that that alignment doesn't mean every school has to sound the same. In fact, we prefer that they don't. We're not robotic. Every school has its own vibrant community and personality, and we want to share that. And so every school will communicate from a shared foundation while preserving what makes it unique. I will say that in the last 3 years, we've undergone a district brand refresh, and that included refining our district's voice and our promise to our families. This is our new logo. Excellence has its own district is our slogan. And while we built that first, we were intentional in including the school voices when it came to extending the brand refresh to the school level.
Yeah, so I'll jump in first because my two schools' logos come first. And for us, while this wasn't a transformational logo change, it did create uniformity, not only within our schools, but also, of course, across the district. For an additional benefit at Poplar Grove is prior to this branding, we had one logo to fit both schools, and we wanted that similarity, but we also needed some differentiation, and so that this rebrand helped us to create that consistent feel, but still leverage the difference in our elementary and middle school. But our logo itself really, actually, that lion face did not change for us at all, but the framework in which it was placed did change significantly.
So at Liberty Elementary, my logo was transformational, my new logo. I had a seat at the table when we were talking about refreshing our logos. I had previously a pretty sad mascot, and I am completely 100% in love with this mascot, and I really do feel like it's vibrant, better articulates and sends out the message of who Liberty Elementary is. And so we are heavily invested as a school in this logo. The personality of the logo just embodies, again, who we are at Liberty. And I really feel like because my voice was taken into consideration when we were working through the brand refresh, again, I'm personally invested with this logo. I have some strong attachment to that logo.
I'd say, you guys can confirm, I'd say all of the schools left this conversation with a better feeling about how their school was represented in the brand overall.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. And the whole idea was that when you see an image that is structured in this way, you immediately associate it with the Franklin Special District, and that is precisely what happened.
Absolutely. All right, so in a couple of slides previous, Susanna talked about the triangle of trust, if you will. And two huge pieces of that triangle are the superintendent and the principal connection. Districts where those connections are strong, you have higher principal retention rates, and you also have just this sense of trust and relationship that's been built between the principal and the superintendent. Authentic conversations create alignment, and I think that is so important. Alignment begins before there is a need for communication. And superintendents can build communication trust through a various number of ways. In our district, Dr. Snowden does it by building visits. He is a very familiar face in our building. He will show up unannounced, announced, walk the halls with me or walk the halls without me. But he's very much a part of our school family. Regular check-ins, he'll check in often with me and my assistant principal, but also with teachers. He wants to know how teachers and staff are doing. And he also does this with the listening to school level realities. He'll come in and just sit for hours, and teachers and staff are welcome to come in and just talk with him. And he makes himself available for that. Understanding each principal's priorities. I think that's really important when we're talking about how each school has its own personality. Each school has its own issues, and Dr. Snowden does a very good job of listening to principals and understanding what our priorities are, whether they change from year to year or there's one priority that we just keep focusing on from year to year. And then also learning each school's story, again, kind of going back to understanding the priorities. We are a district of 8 schools, but we have very different stories. And Dr. Snowden works really hard to make sure that he knows the story of each school, and he helps us to leverage that out in our community.
One of the other things that come out of this idea of trust and the connection that he has with us is when we have to have a difficult conversation or moreover make a difficult decision, we can do that because we know that he's supported and behind us in that.
Yeah, agree. So,
So my role in this and your role in this will be equally important and similar to the principal and superintendent is the presence in the building. So relationships cannot live only in the district office. One of my favorite places to be is in the schools, probably yours too. Communication directors build stronger school stories when they're visible, accessible, and connected. So some of the ways that in our school district I'm allowed to do that is I'm part of the leadership team. We meet monthly with the principals, the assistant principals, the department supervisors, and other district staff. That allows the communications director to hear the concerns of the superintendent, to hear the concerns of the principals, the departments, and provides just great insight when it comes to determining what the message is going to be. Visit schools outside scheduled moments. Of course, you're going to be there for the family nights and the promotion ceremonies or the graduations, but it's equally, if not more important, for you to be there for some of these more quiet moments where you're just walking in the schools and seeing something amazing happen either in a hallway or a classroom. I know it's hard to schedule time outside of your office because sometimes you feel attached to your office and your laptop, but building that time in really does pay dividends. It pays dividends in building trust and credibility, not just with the principals, but also with their staff. Teachers love to see people from the central office walking through their buildings and taking note of the great things that are happening. Another way that I try to build relationships is asking questions. I'm always questioning why it's important. What's the message that you want to get across? What does this mean for the parent or the student? I don't have that insider knowledge. My degree is in journalism and public relations, and so I didn't go through school learning all of the things that the educators and principals and superintendents all know about education. And so asking questions is one of the most important parts of the job. Be known before a crisis happens. Wow, is that ever important? In the midst of a crisis, you don't want to be introducing yourself to the maintenance director or the safety supervisor or the assistant principal when the principal's out of the building. They should all know you and know your face and what you do and why you're there. So show up and be present. Trust grows through consistent and intentional habits. I have had the luxury of being in this amazing district for over 30 years, and so that's easy for me now, but if you're new to your district, take the time, build it into your schedule, and get your feet in the buildings and schedule meetings with the people who are leading these buildings and the departments.
As a principal, this third bullet, ask questions before crafting messages. I really appreciate that Susanna does that, because when she's in the building taking, snapshots of just day-to-day interactions with children or with teachers, when she asks me questions about what message I want to help convey, that helps to tell my school story, and it makes it so that when she's in all 8 of our buildings, the messages are they're a little bit different. They're more tailored toward what that building is about rather than just her perspective, which her perspective is fine, but when she asks those questions, it just helps get the school's voice out there clearly, and I really do appreciate that as a leader.
Before you move on in this slide, I just want to point out the two photos that are on this slide. This is Miss Patton. This was kindergarten kickoff. This is not a spectacular photo that I expected to happen during kindergarten kickoff. Really, my focus was over where the other students were enrolling and turning in papers and with the office staff and meeting the kindergarten teachers. But over in the corner of the gym, Miss Patton was sitting on a rug helping the younger child of the mom who was registering her kindergartner, keeping them busy and active while her student was getting all of the attention. And so this is the photo I shared from kindergarten kickoff, because this speaks to Amy's, her intentionality at being welcoming and helpful, and no role is beneath a school principal. In fact, sitting with this student probably built more trust in that one moment than any phone call or meeting with the parent could have. The other photo is Dr. Erickson. This is her aerospace class. Those kids are sitting at a flight simulator, and I had arranged for a news reporter to walk through and see the aerospace program. It's one of our shining programs in our middle schools, and I popped in and asked Dr. Erickson if she could just walk down the hall, and she made the time, whatever it was she was doing. She knew that was an important place for her to be. And so those are just sort of relational examples of what being in and out of buildings can yield.
And I will say to the bottom picture particularly, and just overall, this slide is a lot about showing up and being present, but that doesn't necessarily always mean physically being present. Susanna is fantastic about sending a text or an email, really leveraging technology to be present and keep a real close pulse on what's happening in our schools. Sometimes it's as simple as just checking in, how are things going today? Or it might be specific, like MLK Day is coming up. Does anybody have anything they want to send my way that I could push out to local media? Or on this day, hey, I have a video or a media crew that would really like to capture some photos and stories from our aerospace program. Can we come on over? And so the presence doesn't always start with boots on the ground. Sometimes, and quite often, it's just a simple text, because she's just always has a close pulse on what's happening in our schools.
Thank you. You're so good. Thank you.
She is.
Okay, so for those of you who are watching this at home or possibly in your hotel room, this might be a good time to pause the video, make some notes, and sort of answer these. We've tried to share with you sort of some basics of what happens in our district, but maybe think about these questions and reflect on how this looks in your school district.
All right, again, this message of consistency builds confidence. So what was a challenge? So something that our district, there was a unique opportunity, a challenge, if you will, keeping a pulse on all the schools in our district while also communicating with the same district voice. So I think it's really important to remember, yes, each school has its own personality, its own voice, but we're also under the umbrella of the Franklin Special District. So we want to make sure as principals that our communication aligns with what the district expectation is. Again, we do have our own voice, but we do want to make sure that campuses reflect the voice of the district. Consistency matters when you're talking about trust and credibility, especially with our families. Messaging, it can be a little bit confusing if you're not careful. So I think the way that our district crafts communication with families is very streamlined. There's no separation truly between the style maybe of schools and the district. I think you can tell when Dr. Erickson or I communicate with our families that we are a part of the Franklin Special District.
Amy, if you don't mind, you and Dr. Erickson, would you share an example of how how you guys know that you're using a voice that the district would expect from the school level?
Sure. So our state has a third grade retention law, and it can be very stressful for families. So there comes a time in the year where, as a principal, I'm responsible for sending out communication to families about how their child is progressing as we get up to state testing. And the letters are sent to me from the district. So what I do is in Parent Square, which is our communication platform, I construct a message to my families that is very much Miss Patton-esque. I make sure they know this is a communication coming home regarding the third grade retention law. I'm here for you. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. And then I attach that district communication to that message.
Yeah, so I've done the exact same thing with third grade retention law. Sometimes our district will, Susanna will craft a letter for us to put out on our own letterhead with our signature on it, but it just doesn't quite sound like something I would put out. So I will tweak it just so slightly so that it truly does sound like it's from me, because at the end of the day, we want to maintain that trust with our families as well, where it doesn't seem like it's just rinse and repeat. And so that can be anything from a technology initiative to hours on an iReady program, the third grade retention law. There are just endless ways that we will kind of tweak that to make it our own, but the core message is consistent. And both of us spoke from the position of the messaging going to parents, but honestly, where I see as principals we leverage it the most is to our staffs. Our district does a great job of equipping us with the information that we need to then roll it out with our staff. Of course, they always follow up with, if you need us to present it or you want us to present it with you, we are happy to, but they really trust us to roll it out in a way that is most fitting for our staff. And I have seen time and time again where that garners the support of the initiative much quicker. And the reality is the staff will follow me before they'll follow somebody that they're a little bit more removed from for the district. And so that's another way that I see it play out a lot.
Yeah. Also, when I'm crafting a social media post, when I first came to Franklin Special, I would always, and even now, I'll look at what Susanna, how she crafts her messages, right? Because again, I realize Liberty Elementary is under the umbrella of the Franklin Special District, so I want to make sure that my verbiage and, there are times to be playful and there are times not to be so playful, right? And so just making sure that I kind of use her messaging as a guide as I'm crafting my messages is very, very helpful.
Like, for example, if the district isn't putting lots of emojis in all of their social media messages, then we look and learn. We're certainly not going to do that just because they're added to the texting platform.
Very much, yes. Good one. That's a good one. All right. So the solution, something that our district does to kind of combat those challenges. Our district leaders, Susanna mentioned this, meet regularly every month. And, we talk about expectations, initiatives, and Susanna has a seat at that table. She's a part of those conversations. And that helps her with understanding, like she said, she didn't go to school to be an educator, but when we're talking about PLCs or instructional rounds, she's at the table and has an understanding so that when we communicate about that to staff or families, she can follow up with something. A lot of times she'll share a post that a school has created and add a district spin to it, which is fantastic. But I really feel like she's, and let me know if I'm speaking for you, she's confident in that because she has a seat at the table when we're talking about those things.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is, I've told you that I've been here for a long time. I didn't always have a seat at the table, and I wasn't always confident enough to ask for one. I wish I had earlier. When I did ask, it was granted immediately. Dr. Schnoon's a great leader, and now it's an expectation for me to be at district level meetings with the educational leaders. And so if you are new to your position, or if you've even been there for a few years and maybe your district is larger and so you aren't directly under the superintendent, have that conversation with your supervisor and just request some level of access for your own understanding of what's going on in the school district.
And that seat at the table, we heard about how that plays out in a large setting with initiatives and expectations. Later on in this presentation, you'll see how it plays out in a small setting with something that is really, really unique and to one particular school, like a teacher who leaves in the middle of the school. But the seat at the table makes that process go so smoothly.
Absolutely. So a big takeaway is visibility and accessibility are key. She is very visible. She's probably too accessible sometimes now. Very accessible. And I do think that that is one of the many reasons that our district is so successful. Consistency builds confidence. Again, here's another solution that we came up with. We have a shared district and school communication platform. So our district uses Parent Square, and you may have this issue in your districts where there's just too many ways for school leaders, teachers to communicate with families, and it can be confusing. The platforms look very different. How they're used is very different. What you can do and what you can't do with those platforms is different. So our district streamlined communication to one platform. We use Parent Square. It's what I use to communicate with families, and it's what my teachers use to communicate with families. We don't use any other platform in the classroom level to update parents with progress or what they're doing in the classroom with pictures. We all use Parent Square. And that has been so beneficial just because parents are very comfortable in getting those messages, but then also replying to those messages or reaching out for assistance or asking a clarifying question. I've given the example that my parents know my email address and they can email me anytime, but what I've noticed since adopting this new platform is they message me or will communicate with me via Parent Square, and that just lets me know as a school leader they're very confident in how to use that platform, and so I will reply back to them in that platform. It has been just so transformational for communication in our building. Another great thing is as a school leader, I have access to what my teachers are sending out to families, so I can get a pulse on how often we're communicating, what are we sharing with families, do I have a grade level that's maybe not sharing as much, is there a grade level who all the newsletters aren't as concise as maybe I would like them to be, so it gives me an opportunity to kind of coach up my staff as well. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I would just add that from a middle school perspective with coaches and athletic events, having one platform for that, it has been huge. Amy spoke a lot about the parent ease and how much parents love it. But as a principal, I oftentimes, not only at the middle school, but at the elementary sometimes as well, felt like I was behind the times in figuring out the new platform that they were utilizing to communicate with families. So that has eliminated that. It also has given us an idea or a way to have a bird's eye view of all the communication that's going out to make sure that we're not watering down communication by over communicating the same message or sending out tons of pictures every single day and then parents kind of just get overwhelmed and check none of our communications. Yeah. And then we can have need an eye-to-eye conversation with those who we need to have about communication and what we want that to look like.
Yeah. The last bullet on this slide is a quote pulled from an article from the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and it reads, "When district announcements are aligned with platforms families already check daily, engagement improves naturally," and we have seen that. Leaders report stronger read rates and more immediate responses when communications build on existing habits rather than trying to create new ones. The read rates and the responses I have seen a huge increase in since moving to just one universal platform across all 8 buildings.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, even to that, our district, as you heard in the beginning from Susanna, is very diverse, and not just in socioeconomic, but also in the languages that we speak. And so the engagement from all of our families, not just our English-speaking families or just our English and Spanish-speaking families, is what I think this platform has also brought for us.
Yeah. All right, the why. Shared discussion and decision-making provide clarity and communication for all. Again, just making sure that decision-making is done as a team with your communication supervisor present has just been so impactful in our district. So we're going to throw a question out there to you. How are you incorporated into the principals or schools conversations? And I really encourage you, if you don't feel like you are incorporated into those conversations, what can you do to get into those conversations? Because I think what we've shown you is that because she's a part of those conversations and the decision making, there's just no gaps in communication between our schools and our district. Everything is just streamlined so beautifully. So one way that we want to show you how communication from the district level kind of trickles down into the school level. A big initiative that we have in our district is the PLC process. We are a model PLC district, and we have several schools who are model PLC schools. So this was actually a training that Solution Tree did in our district, and all 8 schools were represented. Solution Tree I think this was on Facebook, put a message out on Facebook, and then the Franklin Special District then kind of took their message and tailored it so that it was specific to Franklin Special, highlighting the PLC process, telling families in the community what it is, why the work is important. So that just kind of, it shows the district expectation for PLCs. And then I'm going to show you the school. The way that we communicate this. So this is a snippet of a slide from one of my Title I meetings that I did with families in the fall. And here on this slide, I'm talking about how we use Title I funds, and a big chunk of our budget goes toward teacher professional development. And so I highlighted that I'm going to be sending teachers to the PLC conference. And then I just took 2 little bullets and talked about how this conference aligns with the district expectation, and then what teachers are going to learn at the conference and how that will make an impact in the education of their kiddo.
So another example that came, again, consistency across our district and schools. This one was from my elementary school, and this is a parent message in our monthly newsletter. And again, it was highlighting what we were doing as it related to the PLC at work process. Because our education is just littered with acronyms, I spelled that out without our families and really outlined what that meant for them as parents for their children. And so again, consistency, but also building confidence. And that way also it built some pride. So when they saw on social media or in district messaging that our district was a district model PLC school, they knew what that meant and had pride in that, and then could go out and articulate that message to others.
Yeah, no, I will say that our initiative is, our big focus for the last couple of years has been PLCs. Your initiative may be different, but whatever it is that your district is undertaking that permeates each school environment, it's so important to just keep that out there. I mean, explaining what a PLC is and the rocket science behind that is difficult. So chunk it up into little pieces, and then when students achieve, then you always relate it back to the work that they have done in the PLC process or initiative. And so it builds knowledge with your family so that when we talk about this all the time, they feel like they're part of the conversation.
And then when our advisory teams, which are comprised of parents and community members, are around the table making decisions on how we're going to spend our funds, they never question spending a large chunk of our funds to send teachers to things that are PLC related, because they understand the importance of it and the impact that it's having on their children.
Okay, navigating the hard moments, unique and sensitive messaging. So our goal is to allow principals to focus on students, staff, operations, and let me take care of the communications and the messaging. They are way too busy doing the immediate assessment of crisis or sensitive message corralling, investigating, gathering of information. So how can I, in my office across town, help with something that just blows up in a school building? So one of the things that we have in place is each school has set up an emergency text group. So when one of those comes across my phone, I know what my job is. I'm talking to the safety supervisor, I'm talking maybe to transportation, or maybe I'm talking to facilities. I know that the director of schools and the safety supervisor, if Dr. Erickson or Ms. Patton is in the weeds in their own building, they will be contacting me, but I know enough to start a message. I am starting the draft.
And that is, while it sounds so simple, it really is so huge, because this text group has 15, 20 people on it. And so the last thing we need after we communicate this crisis that is playing out real time in our building is all of those people going, let me know if you need anything, keep us posted.
Not helpful.
Not helpful. No. In fact, massive distraction. And so this text group has, for the most part, been trained to just get busy, just as you're.
Yeah, we know that we send a thumbs up to let them know we've received the message. And then we follow up among ourselves while the key stakeholders are on their way to the building to help support in whatever way that they support the team.
And of course, that guiding principle, no surprises.
If Dr. Stone was here, he would be shaking his head vigorously.
Absolutely.
What we have all learned from him, almost upon meeting him, is he does not want to be surprised. You don't surprise him with...
Not even a birthday cake sometimes.
Nope. Yep. So we keep that in our frontal lobe at all times.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, navigating the hard moments, unique and sensitive messaging. The challenge, some situations require personalization at the school level, obviously empathy, and school-specific content. I like to joke with our safety supervisor, who works so intently with law enforcement that sometimes that speak comes out of her, at the kindergarten level. And so we have to rein it in a little bit and know the audience we're speaking to. And so just keeping all those things in mind as the communications person, you're sort of the global director, along with your superintendent or orchestrator of how messaging should be sent depending on the situation. Your role is guidance. If you have already created templates that are in a shared drive, excellent. Keep that up, because as we know here in our district, the legislators like to throw us some new curveballs every year. So having those templates that the principals can grab quickly and tweak to fit their situation is super helpful.
Well, and I'll speak to the template. Having that available, and especially if what you're dealing with at the building level is personal or it is upsetting, the last thing I need to do in that moment is sit down and try to craft a message. Having that template is so helpful. It kind of relieves the stress of, I got to communicate this out to families. It's showing that kind of like, I have your back. Here's a template for you. Use it when you need it. It's a great thing to have available.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not, the messaging they need isn't ASAP or immediate. It's not an emergency, but it is something that they don't deal with every day. And so from the district level, you can help guide that. You can, talk to them, coach them through, how you would, tweak it for their situation, and just provide support. I think all the principals in our building, all of the supervisors, all of the district administrators, every door is open in our school district, and any kind of strategic support that a principal or a supervisor might need is available to them. And I would say you guys know to take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
So supporting principals during challenges, this is something that Susanna does so well.
Oh, thanks.
During mid-year staff changes, I have seen this played out. I'll show an example of what that looked like in just a moment. Responding to media inquiries at the school level, and those oftentimes come as surprises, and she is Johnny on the spot if they show up on our campuses or send us an email. But sometimes they'll send the email to her and she will prep us for what we might be prepared for. And then sensitive personnel situations. So we're going to show you and talk through from principal and communication director some scenarios and how this played out in our district recently, just this past year, and what each of our roles were. So some key questions might be what information should be shared, with whom, and when. And so we'll look at the first example.
this is you.
All right, so this first example was the end of this year, and it came to me actually at almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. Through Parent Square, which Amy had mentioned earlier, a parent reached out and inquired about a potential kidnapping on our campus at dismissal. I was able to put that rumor to rest. There was no, not only was there not validity in it, I couldn't even figure out the stretch from how it might have happened. It was a second grader's imagination gone wild, essentially, is what happened. And so the parent felt much better. I thought the situation was resolved, and we both went to bed. The next morning, Susanna, along with numerous other principals and assistant principals in our district, around, well, it was 8:51, as you see, so almost 9 o'clock in the morning, start sending me screenshots from this Facebook page, which you can post on anonymously. And it is about a potential kidnapping on our campus. And so I read it and realize it's the exact same language that I just read the night before or the day before and dealt with and thought I had put to rest. And so I'll let you jump in on kind of how we handled it, and then I'll circle back onto what that really looked like and how it played out.
Yes. Okay. So in my office, as she said, same thing was happening. People were sharing screenshots of this Facebook post. So the superintendent, of course, was in another state, and a little bit hard to reach at the moment. So reached out to the school. Alicia does a fantastic job of informing her staff of anything that's happening so that when they receive phone calls, they're well aware of the language they need to be using to share it. So I think I reached your secretary, your receptionist, and she tracked you down. I think you were in the midst of solving this issue.
Yes.
With the parent again, and we might have the next slide.
Yeah, so while I was in the midst of solving it directly, Susanna was working on this. And so we'll go over this in just a second, but what it looks like with the parent, ultimately, when I called her and woke her up, that cued me in that she didn't just post this. And actually her husband had to wake her up. And I said, you must have been the one to post this anonymous posting because it's the exact same language. And she said, oh, I forgot about that. So apparently the way that site worked is you put the posting in, but it had to be approved by several layers, and it takes up to 24 hours. And after she made the posting, she decided that perhaps she should just reach out to me and see. And by the way, she was a new family. They had only been here for less than 6 months. She thought she should go ahead and reach out to me and see if I could share any information. And so after she spoke to me, she felt so much better. Everything was squashed, but she forgot that she had made this posting, and she never circled back. So nor did she get a notification, or if she did, she was asleep, that the posting went live. So when the posting did in fact go live the next day at 9 o'clock, when we have a building full of children, mayhem ensued. And so she ensured that while I was on the phone with her, she took the posting down. But before she did, she made a post on the posting in case anyone could see that it was all falsified by a child, and then she took the posting itself down. Meanwhile,
Yeah, so when it first came to me, of course you're going to do your due diligence. You want to talk to this, I called the safety supervisor, asked her because she's over the SROs. She had already heard of this and had already spoken to the SRO, and so I immediately knew that it was a social media rumor, and I started along that path. Speaking to Dr. Erickson, just wanted to make sure I'm not stepping on her toes, or if she had already started a communication to families, because the word was out. We needed to let people know we were aware of it. So Dr. Erickson explained to you what she did. I looped in the director of schools, who was in Florida, and drafted the message, shot it over to Dr. Erickson, who had wrapped up her second phone call with mom, and we were able to get it out. I think this was maybe an hour later.
Yeah.
So being able to work like a well-oiled machine is important. Everything we've mentioned prior to this is just an example of how you want your communications to work.
and I will say with this particular message, instead of me sending it out to my school community, we knew it was important for Susanna to send it out district-wide, because our district is a tight district. We're in a small area, and so everybody needed to see it, so we could just shut it down once and for all. And it did instantly shut it down.
Yeah, yeah.
In Tennessee, there's a state law, a new state law, that requires school districts to report anytime there is a mass threat to a school building or a group of students. And so this notification, you can see this in the attached packet. I know it's hard to read from where you're viewing this live. So we had a student, we had a situation at our summer learning camp where a student made some offhand remarks that needed to be investigated by law enforcement pretty quickly. And so the summer learning camp directors are not principals. They are teachers who we've paid a stipend to be the principal of the summer learning camp for 4 weeks. And so I had already met with the two directors before camp started. We talked about communication, what support did they need. They already had their group. So we had pre-written, once we heard about this legislation, we had pre-written and gotten it approved by our legal counsel.
A good use of a template.
Yes, exactly. We've only had to use this template 3 times. Again, we have 8 schools in their K-8, so we recognize that some of you may have even larger challenges. Even more important to have a template that you can just plug and play. So this was an example of that.
So another type of sensitive situation that we had this year was a staff member who needed to leave in the middle of the year. And that, from a principal perspective, I had very little time to address the issue directly with this staff member, post a job, interview for a new teacher, go through all of the paperwork to hire the new teacher, and as soon as I got to the point in that process where I know this is going to be my person, even though we haven't totally walked it all the way out through the hiring process. I immediately sent that application over to Susanna and said, here's a snapshot of what's happening. The dismissal, this teacher's removal was becoming more and more public. And so we needed to get a message out with the focus on the new teacher. And my head and energy needed to be to control the narrative and what was happening in the building with the current teacher, but I still needed to proactively get ready to introduce the new teacher and shift the focus on something positive. And that's exactly what Susanna did. So if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think that worked beautifully. People get very attached to their children's teachers, and teachers come and go all the time. But when it is a very swift dismissal and a replacement is coming in, parents want some level of comfort and
questions
and to be assured.
Yeah.
So this was the first of several communications that Dr. Erickson took over after the initial, but just wanted to shoot her over something that she could work with again. They know, everybody in this district knows that my work is editable. Please make it your own. Keep the focus. They all understand the district expectation on communication. And so I'm thrilled when they can take something that I've written and make it their own.
So we've all learned together. Here are some of the things that we've learned. Communicate early.
Collaborate often.
Susanna, you're so good at this.
Provide principals with language and support.
Maintain transparency to the greatest degree possible.
Always lead with empathy.
Keep district leaders informed. That's Dr. Snowden's #1 rule, no surprises.
That's right. And communication should be built into decisions, never added afterwards. If you have questions, you want to connect, we're always looking for a thinking partner. And so you'll have our contact information, and we would love to continue learning from you as you are learning from us.
We hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. And if you have any questions that you want to shoot us, feel free. Our contact information is here.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.